return plain simple object, and the client is going to keep guessing the URLs that it wants to hit and interact with the website and get the job done. But there is another way of interacting in which you can rely more on resources, or you can rely more on the HTTP verbs itself. The highest level is the maturity model of designing web APIs is called HETEOS, which is hypermedia as the engine of application state. So the application state is controlled through the response, which is going to be the value, and a couple of links that is going to derive the uh, drive the navigation around the website. Then we also looked at Swagger. Swagger is for documentation of the API. This is not the last step. This is the first step that happens when you want to create web APIs. And over here, you are going to define all the path, all the verbs that it's going to accept, the responses, and the models using which you are going to interact with these API endpoints. Now, there are other tools available in these APIs, which is going to make consuming or giving a better experience for API developers and API consumers. One such tool is called NSwag, and if I add a package of that, I'm going to pick up the NSwag ASP.NET Core and notice the number of downloads. There are about 13 million. I'm going to install this tool. So with this tool added, if I now go to dependencies and packages, we're going to see NSwag, and then this got added when we selected the OpenAPI support. Now, these tools, they can be consumed using the middleware framework. And to do that, we'll have to use services dot okay, not this, services dot add swagger document. And this thing is, if I hit F12, it is coming from the NSwag service collection. I hope you do remember seeing extension classes where we add the dependencies of multiple interfaces and implementation that are required by this particular solution. We don't clutter everything inside the configure service method. We use extension method from that library. We jump into that code, come back with dependencies. So after this code returns, it is going to have those dependencies identified and mapped. I'm going to get rid of this statement over here because it is present in both the solutions. And I am going to add, I'm going to comment out this as well. And just before routing, I'm going to add two more middleware. So you remember from custom middleware solution that when we call the use OpenAPI, it is another extension method, and it is going to call this particular it is going to have these particular settings applied through the middleware settings. So we are configuring it to use OpenAPI, and we are configuring it for Swagger UI version 3 as well. If I hit F5 now, the service is going to start as the regular service. I can go to API/student, and it's going to come back with the values and the links. What we're going to do next is I have a tool installed. It is called NSwagStudio. And then This tool, it comes in handy for consuming the API documentation that we have created so far. Right? So I have this tool installed already. Let me bring that up. And over here, I am going to provide the URL for the document. And that URL, it can be picked up or built from this point onwards. So I'm forgetting the syntax a little. I think it is Swagger. And let's see if I do create a local copy. It is probably complaining that right, I might have to go to /v1/swagger.json. I think I've commented that code out. Okay, so this is the document that it came back with. Now, if I select a C# client and say generate output, based on what we have created here in the JSON file, how we have documented our API, it is going to generate a client code. Now, you can simply copy this and launch a new instance of Visual Studio. Let's create a new project. I can create a console client now, console application, and I'm going to call it University Console Client. And the regular drill, I'm going to add the app by control dot. It's going to generate a type, and if I do app dot run, it is going to generate a method as well. Now, inside this class, under this namespace, I'm going to paste the code that we copied from this tool. It is about 700 lines of code, 400 lines of code. I'm going to copy this, come here and paste it. And there is a package that it requires. It's called NewtonSoft for JSON. The packages, they are available in NuGet repository. I'm going to install that package, NewtonSoft.json, and hit the install. With this, I think there's one error left. Right, because it was coming alongside Pragma, it ran into a compile error. So with this namespace added, I think I can get rid of this namespace as well, but I'm going to leave it as is and apply the outlining. And now if we analyze this, it has added multiple classes like the student class. There is something called as student client, and it has a base URL set to localhost 5000. If it is getting difficult to read through the code, you have a nice handy option here at the top, and on the student client you have option of get async, post async, and creating the client itself. So let's jump to the get async function. The get async function is going to call this implementation. If I jump to that, it is building the URL by appending /API/student, and it is creating a client. It's an HTTP client. Remember seeing it yesterday? So it is declared at the client level, HTTP client, and this client is then used to issue the HTTP request. If I click on the client again, it is doing send async. And for doing this send async, it is going to require a request object, and that request object is created using the get HTTP request message. In this request, they are adding headers, what headers we want. It has defined a method called HTTP get, and in the try block, we are going to make that. So we are going to process. So this code is processing the response and extracting out the header values and the other response codes. If it is status code 200, it is treating it as success. Else, it is going to say that HTTP status code was not expected. Right now, we can use this to generate or interact with the website itself. So this is the boilerplate code that is going to help us with consuming the API. I'm going to do student client, which is in the namespace. I'm going to add a using statement for that and get the student client, and I'm going to do new student client, and it is going to require an HTTP client object. So let's go ahead and give it that object. HTTP client assigned to new HTTP client, like so. For this, I'll have to add another reference to dot using system.net.http, and I can pass this HTTP client to this proxy class. Now, if I say get async, it is going to get me the first set of response. I'm going to save that response over here, and because it is async, the async implementation, I'll have to modify the function definition with async. I'm also going to change this to run async just to indicate that function is asynchronous, and I'm going to put the await keyword over here. With await, it's going to become the response object as against the task object, and now I can print this response object. It is only going to print type. We're going to come to this point and analyze what is in the response object. So let's hit F5 and make sure that our service is running. So I'm going to come back to the WebAPI demo. It looks like it is running. And now if I execute this code, right, so for some reason I'm not getting the response object. The program is exiting. Okay, I might have to do another dot. Let's change this to task, and then it'll wait. Using task. You know what? I'm gonna change instead of this. I'm gonna say because it is void, it's gonna complain again. I have to change this to task of integer, and let me just return 0. Probably that was not needed. I was missing a reference. Sorry about that. And yeah, I can leave the await keyword here. So the run function, probably that is not going to exit the application, right? So the application has now kind of waited, and we are seeing a response of enumerable of student. right? It is coming from one of these classes, the code that we copied. But what we are interested in is this response object. So let's go ahead and add it to the watch. And it has two elements. One is value, one is links. And inside values, we have the course ID and another course ID and first name and last name. And inside links, we have those three links available. So we can go to student, we can go to instructors, and we can go to courses as well. If I change the type and switch to, I'm not sure if there's a post method. There's a post async as well. I'm going to comment this out. And the post async is going to invoke the post API, this URL, and I think we still have that breakpoint. So we still have this breakpoint. I'm not sure if it is going to hit. We are starting the client, the console client, where we have the code from the NSwagStudio, and I'm going to hit the F5 button, and it has hit the post URL through our client. So our client code is still at this point, post async, and there is another debugging session happening in another Visual Studio window where we have created our service. And this service, once again, is going to add the student to our repository. It's going to return with the response, and it is saying response of student. And then we analyze this response object in the watch. It has, once again, we did not set the value, but the links that came this time, it is students/3, so it's extracting the first student, and it is giving you an option of deleting the student and updating the student. This update here is very similar to, say, save for later, and this delete is like remove from cart. So you can define the operations that you want to provide through the API inside your response object, and that response object can be consumed by the client. Right? We are looking at console client, but then in the coming weeks, when we talk about front-end development technologies, single-page applications like Angular and React, we are going to see an example of the service that we have created here. It can help generate those links that we saw when we were in the cart. So when we were in the cart here, we had an option of save for later, right? So we could add those elements back or remove element from the cart. And those links, we're going to generate those links from this post action. That when you click add item to cart, you're posting something. And when you're posting something, it is going to come back with the operation, the next actions that you can perform and on that object. All right.